Okay, this topic segment is going to be on entry and exit routes, and obviously because it's relatively dark, it's getting dark anyway, this first portion is going to be on tacks. I use tacks a lot. HME makes a brown tack, that's a company, and there's a lot of companies that make white tacks, and then HME also makes an orange tack, and I use all three. I use the brown or the green tacks when I'm going in areas on public land where I don't want other people to see my tacks in the daylight hours. Because if you put a white tack in a tree, anybody can see it in the daytime. You put a green or a brown tack in a tree, they're very, very difficult to see. Orange tacks, usually what I use those for is if I'm using white tacks, I'll put an orange tack next to a white tack when I want to make a turn. In other words, if I'm following a route in the dark and I come up on a white tack and there's an orange tack next to it, I know I need to either turn right or left. And I also use bread ties. Bread ties, there's a couple companies that make those, and bread ties are for wrapping around limp branches or when you're going through tall weeds or cattail marshes and stuff like that. You can just wrap them around like a twist tie on a loaf of bread. And they're real easy to use and they shine for a long, long ways. The only issue is they're always white. You can't get those in dark colors. Come on, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now I've got an orange tack here at first because it's relatively bright. Now we're getting into the green tacks, and these tacks you can't see in the daytime, but as you can see, they shine up pretty dang good at night. So what you've got here is instead of using a white tack where they can follow right to your tree, you got green tacks where they can't see them in the daylight, but you can follow them in the dark. And there's the next tack, and as you can see, the orange tack is on the left side of the green tack, so I know I have to make a left-hand turn. When you put in a second tack where you got to make a turn, you can also kind of judge your turn by how you put the tack. If you notice, that tack is not directly to the right of the white tack, so that's not a 90-degree turn. That's going to be slightly less than a 90-degree turn that I have to turn and go right and look for my next tack. So you can actually know exactly where your next tack is by how you place that orange tack next to your either brown or green tack. And on this particular route, we're using white tacks. This is a piece of private ground, but it's heavily pressured, so I'm using white tacks, and as you can see, they reflect a lot farther. Headlamps shine every place. You know, a lot of times people will get out of their tree and they think, well, the hunt's over, so my exit out of the tree is irrelevant. That's so not true. Everything's relevant on public land. So I'm going to show you what it's like to use a headlamp, a bright headlamp, versus just a little single AAA pen light, which is what I use if I use a light at all. So you're always turning your head when you're climbing trees, looking at steps or branches or whatever. And it's just a lot of light shining around. Now this is what I typically use, just a single AAA pen light. That's what I use for entering my hunting locations. It's what I use if I need to find steps in the tree in the dark, coming up, going up or going down, and that's all I use. I try to keep the tree right in front of the light. I don't want this light going to either side of this tree and shining out in the open. You want to keep your entries and exits as low impact as possible. And the smaller and dimmer the light, the less impact you'll have.
Public and Pressured Land Deer Hunter with John Eberhard has been brought to you by onX Hunt, where the pavement ends, onX begins.